When you see all these fantastic boutique guitar and reverb pedals, you might ask yourself, how do sound designers get those really unique reverb and delay sounds? How do they design them to create hardware that's so cool like that? And one of the secrets to processing is that when you delay a signal, you can alter it in a number of ways to create a unique character. A lot of times people just assume you're filtering it, which you can see in the EQ on the basic delay that Ableton has. Maybe you're shifting the pitch, you're kind of doing some modulation, but you can also shift the frequency of the sound, do frequency shifting. And that's what spectral time is. These modules, the spectral modules, are probably underused because they're kind of difficult to understand what they're actually doing, but you get so many amazing sounds from them. And spectral time is basically designed around a delay idea. So right next to it, you can see I have a regular Ableton delay, and these two modules are set with roughly similar parameters. They have a similar amount of repeats, or I guess you call that feedback. And you also have, a similar time here. So you can see this one's at 250 milliseconds, so is this one. But they're gonna sound very different. So I'll play a sample for you. You can hear this sample already has a little bit of delay on it, but you'll hear the difference when we turn on more delay. And of course, when I hit stop, you can hear it further decaying. Now here's spectral time. Now, of course, if you're wearing headphones, you probably heard the difference even more so than if you're on a laptop or something, because it has a very stereo sound, which helps from this module. But the frequency shifting is the key here. It's acting like a delay, but when you frequency shift 10 hertz or below, it's still fairly musical sounding, but it has an interesting sort of weirdness to it. If you go past 10 hertz, this is just my opinion, it tends to get much more experimental. So when you stay under 10 or even under 5, this is around 6 hertz, you can see here, it's still very musical. And that's why spectral time is a really cool delay module to take advantage of if you haven't explored it already. And the really cool thing about spectral time is down here, the spray, which by default is off, if you turn this up, it also makes the sound more blended in and smoother sounding. This is just what I found at these settings. And that can also make it very musical when you're trying to use it in a context that isn't trying to be too experimental. So we'll play the sound. So that's where it's at now. You can see I have the dry wet. It's actually just mixed in there. And now what I'm going to do is turn the spray up. So what spray is doing is distributing the delay times based on the different frequencies, and that's going to create sort of a blending effect, I find. It kind of obscures the effect a little bit more than if it was straight on like this. You can kind of hear the attack of the delay a lot more. So if you want to remove that clarity and blend, I just like to use the word blend. They call it spray in this case. Kind of gives it a smoother, more obscured sound, which is really musical. And then you can take this much further with something called spectral blur. And what spectral blur is doing is it's creating a reverb-like sound, I feel like is the best way to describe it. And it's really cool. I'll just turn it on. So you'll notice there's a lot more decay onto it, and these are just default settings, by the way. So it's a really fun thing to just jump into if you're trying to create those more wide, expansive, shimmering kind of ambient soundscapes. Spectral blur is a really cool way to create that and smooth out really any sample into something much more ambient-like. And then you can also take this a lot further using Spectral Resonator. And this is the third spectral device that they offer. And what this thing kind of does is it takes the signal and it's obviously going to change it quite a lot. So if I just play the sound, you can see here I have a Midi track that's tagged to it. As you can see here, it's receiving Midi from that track. So I can actually play the resonator and it's just going to respond to the sample being placed into it. I'm just playing my keyboard below my desk. So basically just took that signal that we were playing around with and created an instrument out of it. And I just have dynamic tube here to add some drive. What I can do is put that in audio effect rack and just run it parallel. So now I can still have the original sound that we created, that cool ambient sound. So I have the Spectral resonator going as like an instrument, and I have the original really cloudy sounding thing that we did to that sample. And it sounds a little bit separated, a little bit messed up, not that great at the moment. But then what I do, just minimize this, I'm going to add another spectral blur. And you can think of this thing as an amazing sort of blending device. So it's going to blend those two things together. And because, like I said, I can control this with Midi pitch-wise, I'm kind of creating a really blurred, playable, ambient texture. And I did it in just a few moves. So you can see here, I just played around. I got spectral time there, some delay. I blur it. You could even get rid of spectral time in this chain. And then I have the audio effect rack with the resonator acting like a pitch controllable instrument. And then the blur blends it all together. And it sounds like this. So I'm playing the notes. So it's a pretty unique way to build a ambient texture. And a really cool place you can take this is layering in another instrument like a piano with a delay on it, because you have an instrument you can play, it's going to respond to the resonator in pitch, but it's also playing against that blurred sample that we first started with, right? So it's creating a lot of interesting sort of pitch things happening, even sometimes conflicting keys to the original sample. But because of the spectral blurring effect, it works together in a really interesting and still musical way. So here I have a piano sound that's just layered in with everything else on, and you can hear the way I'm going to interact with it. In this case, I'm going to play in C major, which will copy to where that original sample is. But even if you clash and go into the parallel minor key, it still works really well. So the blurring happens, and then the piano comes in. So if you haven't checked out the Spectral modules in Ableton Live, I highly recommend it. I'm just going to take this chain and hit shift click and group it, and I'll post a link down below where you can download it for free if you want to check it out for yourself. The only catch is you have to have a Midi track enabled, and that's going to be the thing that's going to control the resonator, and that will be sort of the instrument component of the patch. But it's a really unique way to have a playable ambient texture. So you might find that really interesting. If you found this video interesting, hit the like button and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And there's a link down below to everything that I've done on the channel. On my Patreon, there's tons of content there. MIDI, presets, other synth tutorials. So be sure to check it out. I'll see you on the next video. Have fun making your music.